Welcome to the world today. I am Amarachi Ubani. It might be time to celebrate after 29 days of fasting for Muslims, but Muslims in Gaza are not doing much celebrating. The situation is so dire that the UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, has called for an immediate halt to violence there, saying the Palestinian territory is in critical condition. Israel launched an offensive against Palestinian Hamas militants in the small coastal territory 3 weeks ago after a surge in rocket fire. However, Mr. Ban took no sides but was critical of both sides for firing into civilian areas.
It may be the time for Muslim celebrations, but there's not much celebration going on for Palestinians. Those in the Gaza Strip faced a Great Eid al-Fitr holiday, which marks the end of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan, which came after a 21-day conflict with Israel, which has left devastation across the coastal enclave and inflicted heavy casualties. In the southern Gazan city of Rafah, dozens of worshippers attended holiday prayers amid the rubble and under the collapsed roof of a mosque heavily damaged by airstrikes. International pressure had been mounting to end the conflict, in which some 1,031 have been killed. An Israeli military official said the army would only fire in response to attacks, arguing that this would be for an unlimited period. The United Nations Security Council called an emergency meeting early on Monday to urge an unconditional humanitarian ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, where weeks of bloodshed had claimed more than 1,000 lives. In a statement released at the meeting, Security Council President Eugene Richard Gazana said that the Council expresses grave concern regarding the deterioration in the situation as a result of the crisis related to Gaza and the loss of civilian lives and casualties.
The Security Council expresses strong support for the call by international partners and the Secretary General of the United Nations for an immediate and unconditional humanitarian ceasefire, allowing for delivery of urgently needed assistance, and they urged all parties to accept and fully implement the humanitarian ceasefire into the Eid period and beyond.
Though being secondary to a Security Council resolution, the presidential statement still needs to be adopted by the 15-nation UN body. However, both Israeli and Palestinian representatives expressed disaffection over the statement. Permanent observer of Palestine to the UN, Riyad Mansour, said he is disappointed that the Security Council resolution regarding the Gaza conflict is still under review. However, he said he hopes the humanitarian ceasefire called by the UN could continue.
We will continue knocking on the door of the Security Council so that the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility. We will not accept that the Security Council to continue dragging their feet and to act as if this is a small issue.
Permanent representative of Israel to the United Nations, Ron Proso, expressed his discontent over the statement.
Don't fall for the terrorist propaganda. Don't believe the newspapers that claim that both sides are equally to blame. We did everything we could to avoid this conflict, but Hamas refused to stop the attacks. Israel agreed to 5 ceasefire proposals. Hamas rejected or broke all of them, even the ones that they requested by themselves.
He blamed Hamas for jeopardizing Israel's effort towards a ceasefire truce.
Well, let's talk more about this now. The VOA's Scott Stearns joins me now from Washington. Scott, thank you for joining us on The World Today. Now, before now, the international community had been appealing to Israel to observe a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, but this is as much Hamas's fault as it is Israel's, isn't it?
Secretary Kerry spoke here at the State Department just about 25 minutes ago, again calling for an unconditional humanitarian ceasefire to honor the Eid holiday. It's certainly the hope among U.S. officials that they can use some of the momentum, maybe get some sort of rolling sequential 24-hour ceasefires having fallen short of getting a full 7-day ceasefire that the Secretary was looking for in the region. One thing I heard from him or from the Americans before was that any process to resolve the crisis in Gaza in any lasting and meaningful way, he said, must lead to the disarmament of Hamas and all terrorist groups, and the U.S. would work closely with the international community in pursuit of this goal. While Secretary Kerry and the Qatari and Turkish foreign minister were together in Paris calling for Hamas to honor a humanitarian ceasefire, and should take it on faith that Qatar and Turkey would pursue in any short-term sense the disarming of Hamas, especially if Israeli troops are to remain on the ground in Gaza during this humanitarian ceasefire to settle the tunnel issue.
The greatest worry here, Scott, is the number and the rise in the number of civilian deaths in the Gaza Strip, which is the basis for which the United Nations is calling for both sides to cease fire and let humanitarian supplies come into Gaza. But how true is it, or is it possible that Hamas really is using civilians as human shields in this offensive?
I've done no reporting from Gaza during this offensive, so I cannot speak to where and how Hamas is positioning its military assets in a relatively small place. On the security issue and the civilian deaths, I think it's clear from the report that you had at the top and just listening to what's coming from the Israeli government, they are going to stop. They're going to stop this campaign only when they believe that their security needs are met, both in stopping the rockets and in destroying these tunnels. They discovered far more tunnels than they originally anticipated were there, and I think that has pushed back the deadline, that they need more time to settle the issue of these Hamas tunnels.
And the international community seems to be more focused on the number of people dying and have said nothing